Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Rise Urban Nation, where we dive deep into the stories of Black entrepreneurs who are reshaping the landscape of innovation and courage. I'm your host, Terrell Simmons, and today, we got a special guest in the building. My brother has joined us, the young, the incredible Honorebel Walker, whose work is revolutionizing how companies approach engineering and research projects. Honorebel, it's great to have you, brother. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Man, it's been a journey with me. Like, all right, give me the recap. I think we first met, was it at which competition? Which
Yeah.
competition did
So
we
no,
first
no.
meet?
So actually, it's funny. So I was gonna wait to mention this as you went to go change your glasses, but we first met in the Canal School of Business at USD,
Okay.
and then we were at a San Diego Angel Conference event, right? One of their events, and then I think it was 2022 summer. I was a part of their accelerator, and they essentially had like an event, and then the very first one, and then you were there. And then I was in Barrio Logan, and I went to 9-5, the glasses spot, and I went in. And I'm like, nice glasses, and you were wearing 9-5s.
Look, I got my 9-5s on too right now.
So that's actually how we met. Was that you were wearing these 9-5 glasses, and I came up to you, and I'm just like, how do you like the brand? Because I've been following them for a while, and then we just kind of kicked it off from there.
Yeah, that's what's up. Like, cause me and Honorebel, we've been crossing paths in the social innovation space. Him as somebody who's building something, me as somebody who's trying to create equity, diversity, inclusion in the space, looking at programming, how we get more of us into these spaces in front of angel investors and all that. So it's been great to just see you and your journey and where you're going. And man, you're taking it to the next, graduation
tomorrow.
That's crazy. You made time for us, even in the months of graduation. I can't believe it's already here. How you feeling about it?
I'm feeling really good. You know, my family came here. They came down from Oakland. My grandpa from Nigeria, so I'm super excited about that. So yesterday we actually had the Black Grad, right? That's an opportunity for Black students in the campus to kind of come together and celebrate. And then we have the large commencement on Sunday, tomorrow, at 2 p.m. So. Yeah, so then today I had today off, so everything worked out.
Yeah, that you make it all Nigerian parents proud. The day my son graduates from university, and then Nigerian parents, because everybody once they graduate and they get some prestige, they're all honorable. The honorable chief, but that's officially your name.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, look, you have a fascinating path from studying electrical engineering at University of San Diego to founding SpaceTime. Can you walk us through what inspired you to start this venture?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I guess because I care about something called first principles. I mean, you just look at the beginning and the foundation. So just kind of going back to way before when I was young. I grew up in Oakland, California, right? And then just to make the long story short, I was always interested in technology and engineering and architecture, especially. So I joined this program called the Hidden Genius Project, right? And they're up in Oakland, and they're in Oakland, Richmond, Atlanta, Detroit, Baltimore, and Chicago. So they're all over now, right? But I was a part of the third cohort in Oakland, and their mission is to train and mentor Black male youth in technology, leadership, and entrepreneurship skills to transform their lives and communities, right?
Yeah.
So that's what they did. So long story short, what we were able to do is we actually went to Facebook, Google, LinkedIn, Twitter, all these top tech companies in 8th grade and a freshman in high school every single summer, right? So I got early exposure to technology. And then when I walked into these spaces, not only was I inspired, but I also kind of looked at it as like a call to action. And I was like, well, I want to, be an entrepreneur. I want to own a big tech company like this. And, I was able to get an internship starting at EA Sports in 2018. So I was a part of their program and their big, video game company. And then being an electrical engineer at University of San Diego, I got an internship working at Astra Space, which is a defense and aerospace company in the Bay Area. They make rockets. And then 2022, I started my company, SpaceTime. And that's kind of how I got into that space. And I also worked for other companies as well. But 2022 was the year that I started SpaceTime.
What inspired the name SpaceTime? Was it your time there at that internship, or what really inspired that name?
Yeah. So if you think about, so we develop SpaceTime is to be like a firm where we develop people's ideas, right? Like just
Yeah,
very, very simple. So if you have an idea, you come to us and then we'll help you develop it, right?
yeah,
And then if you think about the concept of space-time, right, from the theory of relativity from Einstein, it pretty much
yeah.
talks about how, within the fabric of space meets at an intersection of time, you have an actual production of something, right? So the way
Hmm.
that I looked at it was that, we have people who have all these ideas and that's kind of the space, right? But they may not have the time or the resources to do it. What exactly is that intersection where you can bring those two things together and actually build something meaningful? And as an engineer and also I could have got a physics minor, we also study a lot about that kind of stuff. So that's kind of why I came up with the name Space Time.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's dope right there. That's deep. I never asked you that because I remember when I was at, I can't remember, when I was a judge at one of the competitions over there, and I
yeah,
saw I finally saw the logo,
yeah,
and I was like, man, it gave me a nostalgia feeling because I remember playing Nintendo growing up, and then we're in that this age of virtual reality and virtual space, right?
right,
So for me, it gave me like a connection. Like I had this harmonious connection with the brand and the logo already because I was like, virtual space, virtual
yeah,
reality. Even though it's not that. I mean, you are
similar for
sometimes
sure.
you do bring community on the virtual space. It wasn't all just about that, but like
Right.
that was the instant connection when I saw it. And then when you started speaking, I was like, oh man, that's it. That's the one right there.
I appreciate it. Yeah, and I think that was, and a lot of that stuff is done intentionally. Like we really wanted to, do something that not necessarily was completely different, but also was different enough that people could still make references to something that they've kind of already, seen very similar. So, for example, a lot of the question that we have is like, who are the big competitors within our space? What other companies are doing it similar to you? And we actually kind of take a piece from all these top companies, and we kind of have kind of put that into our brand book and the way that we just want to operate and do business. And that's kind of like some of that inspiration as well.
Yeah. Now, I love the fact that you guys are able to crowdsource, get all these people together and solve like problems in such a very innovative way. Like, and just hearing some of the stories of some of the things that you've been able to do thus far.
Yeah.
Even, just being in the early development of this, right?
Right.
I'm curious to know because seems like such a big task to do, not only to get so many people together to be innovative, to create and solve problems, but also putting this company together and graduating,
Yeah.
but specifically diving into the challenges of transitioning from when you first had the idea to a
Yeah.
functioning business, or a more functioning business. What you know presented some significant hurdles, and what were some of the biggest challenges you encountered early on?
Yeah, no, definitely. So I mean, I think that me being a student, I think already kind of has this one hurdle, right? Just being full-time student, and then on top of
Mhm.
that, I think me being an engineering student is another thing, and then me being an electrical engineering student is another thing, right? And I think that you're kind of just competing against time, and obviously resources as well. Like for example, like there, I get invited to we events every other week, but sometimes I'm always kind of thinking, well, do I go to event or do I get this assignment in? And obviously I'm a
Mhm.
student full time, so that's kind of what takes the most importance. But I think that the hurdles of time, I think, is probably like the number one, right? And I think number two is resources. So just figuring out who are in positions that can give you the opportunity to, present to what you're trying to work on, or even, where you can learn about what they're working on. I think that's going to be
Mhm.
number two. So having access to resources. And then number three, like everybody else, access to capital. I
Yeah.
think that if you look at like how I was able to, do a lot of stuff that we're able to do, it was really from pitch competitions, right? So
Mhm.
like if you're a student out there watching or just somebody who has an idea, sign up for any and every pitch competition that you can because, believe it or not, like that's bootstrapping. And
Mhm.
that's when that can really get you from, not having a website to having a website,
Yeah.
and then having a website and then having a functioning prototype to not having a functioning prototype. So those would be like my three hurdles, but also the three things that I think that would be very beneficial.
Yeah, I strongly suggest pitch competitions because that's how I don't know if I ever told you the story. That's how I officially got into the game because Google and Startup Weekend about 5-6 years ago reached out to me because they wanted to do more D&I efforts, and I was doing a lot of workforce development at that time,
Yeah.
and so I helped them. And then they told me to come attend a pitch competition. I was like, oh, I'm not an entrepreneur engineer, and they're like, oh, you more of an entrepreneur than you think you are, and that's just because I was I was more of an entrepreneur because I was building different programs in nonprofits and companies through workforce development dollars,
Mhm.
right? Which
Gotcha.
is a different type of kind of startup focus. And then I attended one and I won my very first pitch competition. And then overnight I had funding for a website. We had the website, we had the funding, we had a conversation with VCs, we had a follow-up conversation.
Yeah.
So overnight I owned the tech company and I was like, "Sheesh, how did this happen?" And like, all right, what am I going to do now? Cuz
Yeah.
like it wasn't a passion of mine, so eventually hadn't finished it. I mean, we still got access to the project, but
Yeah.
maybe who knows? One day I'll get the passion to finish it or get the right people involved.
Yeah.
But it was an amazing journey. So, I want to go. I want to pivot to strategies and success because you mentioned all of those different sticking points and obviously funding being one of them.
Yeah.
With the challenges that you mentioned earlier in mind, what strategies have you employed to like navigate these obstacles and achieve success?
Yeah, so I want to also just mention one more thing about the last comment as well. So,
Yeah,
it's funny because I actually met the Google CEO in 2022, right?
yeah,
And I was able to pitch him my company and kind of talk to him, and then I was able to also talk to Google Ventures, which is the venture arm, right?
yeah.
Then I also talked to something called Capital G, which is another venture arm of Google, and something that
Mm,
they talked about and you just mentioned was entrepreneurship, right? So Google has this system called Area 120, right? And then
mm,
Area 120 is really their like entrepreneurship firm where they allow their employees and their people who want to build a new product to come to this private area, kind of like Skunk Works for Lockheed Martin, and just
yeah,
design and iterate. So I think that's another area that a lot of people who think that I have to go the startup founder route. I'm like, no, you don't have to always go that route, but you can go the
yeah.
entrepreneur route, means that you're part of a large company and you want to do something special within that company. That's another route as well. So I just want to kind of segue into that, but
I love that. I love that.
to answer your question about some of the ways that I handled a lot of the hurdles.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, again, right, like I'm a big fan of mentorship, right?
Okay.
I think, what I was able to do was I was actually able to look at some of the core business functions that we were focusing on. So that's technology, right? So technology, product, people, and marketing. Those are kind of like some of the things that I kind of really want to focus on. And I was able to actually pick somebody from each one of those industries and really kind of have that be my guide for mentorship. So I definitely think that that's what people should do. I think mentors are still to this day, believe it or not, often underrated. And I think that you
Mhm,
have to put, because, on top of that, right, like building a team is not easy, right?
mhm.
Finding like-minded individuals that are ready to work, that are ready to put in the same amount of time, energy, and effort you would do as a founder is not easy at all, right? So I think that the best thing that you could do is
Mhm,
the best thing you could do is actually develop, people who have done it before, people who are in it, who may be older than you, who may have had access to capital, who have more capital. Like one of my mentors just raised, $5.5 million, right, for his startup, right? So these are people that
mhm,
phone numbers that I have. So whenever I'm dealing with a challenge for my company, I'm like, hey, I'm having this challenge, picking up the phone. What do you think?
mhm.
Okay, 30 seconds. We're talking about it. Okay, got you. This is a frame of thought. Now I'm applying it to my business. So I think that that's something that people should definitely do. And that's really how I overcome a lot of hurdles, is just getting a lot of mentors.
Like, it's funny as I'm listening to you talk, a lot of that is very embedded in your company too, because I feel like you help companies with the same thing, navigating obstacles to achieve
Yeah.
success. Mostly, when it comes, to the ability to match talent precisely and
Yeah.
quickly,
Right.
and get those problems solved. Could you share a success story and highlights of the impact of some of your work
Yeah.
that you guys have done?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So this, I feel like I want to just give you guys our one-liner, just because I feel like we weren't very clear with that. So my company, SpaceTime, what we do is we connect technical talent from scientists, researchers, engineers to technical problems. So that could be companies that have some kind of technical problem and they're looking for more talent to solve them. And we do that by crowdsourcing talent. And for those of you who
Yeah.
don't know, crowdsourcing talent pretty much means that you don't only use the company's talent to solve these problems, but you actually invite outside or third-party partners to actually come in
Mhm.
and actually solve them. So from consultants, from just community stakeholders, and whoever they may be. So yeah, that's what we do. And to
Yeah.
answer your question about something that we identified, so we ended up getting in contact with the Hayward Unified School District, right?
Yeah.
An organization up in the Bay Area. So they were essentially saying, Honorable, what we identified is that we have in our community, we have violence, right? We have crime, and those obviously together. We have homelessness. We have all these challenges, right? That are hurting our community, and we know what
Mhm.
you're doing at Space Time. How can you kind of help us? How can you give us a framework to solve these problems, right? So then, what I decided to say, well, let's look at them as problems, but let's figure out a way to turn these problems or these challenges into opportunities, right? So that's kind of what I did. So I kind of gave them a framework of thought. So what I did was I ended up, hosting a workshop, right? So I hosted a workshop for students, educators, innovators, so mainly students and staff, right? And they essentially just gave me a bunch of their problems that they had, and I gave them a curriculum and a framework on how they can solve some of their challenges. And we came up with solutions
Mm.
immediately, right? Within
Wow.
like 2 minutes, right? So I think that's sometimes, a way that, a lot of people think that a lot of these problems are kind of, irreversible. But I think
Mhm.
you have to just figure out a way to change your frame of thought. And that's kind of what we have been doing for a lot of organizations.
Love that. Love that. Man. So much to dive into that because I do think it's a reversal of frame of thought and unlearning some of the things we learned so we can look at it from a new set of lens
Yeah.
and think of a whole different structure. Because like sometimes the systems that we're using to solve the problem, it's not the system that we need. We need a whole new vision and a whole new system. And what could that look like when you're put in the room to imagine, recreate,
Yeah.
and then have these thought processes going? So I love that, love that, love that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Reflecting on your journey,
Yeah.
what are some key lessons you've learned?
Oof, well, I mean, I'm still in it, so I'm continually learning. But I think that number one, I think is continuous improvement. I think that's
Okay.
number one. I think that if you think about like something called like agile practices, so that's a term in software engineering on how you want to develop. There's two main methods. There's waterfall method, meaning that you just take the large scope of work and you just chip away at it day by day, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the agile method, which means that you take a large scope of work, you divide it up into, let's say, something called sprints, which are maybe 1 or 2 weeks, right? And then you
Mm-hmm.
finish that sprint, and then sometimes you go to the next one, or you actually just prolong the experience or prolong the sprint, right? Something that I was able to do, right, was actually use this type of continuous improvement to just get better, like fractionally every single day, right? 1%
Yeah.
every single day, right? So that's probably like the biggest takeaway, just to kind of understand that, everything that you have or every goal that you may see that you may have in the future, it's not going
Yeah.
to happen like immediately, right? Like you're going to have to continually improve on that and just continue to iterate and learn new things. And I think that, what we're doing at SpaceTime, the concept of crowdsourcing talent pretty much also could, what also means is that, let's say you're trying to build a plane, right? Most people
Mm-hmm.
may think that you only need engineers, but you actually need a lot more people outside of engineering than you actually may think you do, right? So I think
Yeah.
that's another thing that I want to give people, a frame of thought as well, where it's like you may have a certain major or you may have a domain expertise that you may think that you're just completely focused on, but in reality, you need so many more different types of mindsets to actually help solve this problem, because multiple opinions, multiple perspectives helps this problem actually receive a solution a lot faster.
Yeah, what you made me think about is like, when you said airplanes, our dear friend Boeing has been in the news lately, and you saying they need more. Sometimes you need more than engineers to solve a problem. I think they might need space time right now to
Listen,
solve their problem.
so I forgot the new Boeing CEO's name, but if you're listening, we got you. All the planes that you guys have doors dropping off, and you have the MCAT. So it's funny. So MCAT is something that MCAT is a software system in Boeing that was flawed, right? They
Yeah,
launched it in Malaysia and Kenya actually,
right.
and the planes went up, and then they ended up killing everybody on board.
Oh
So this
man,
is one
that's
of those things
terrible.
where it's like at Spacetime, as we're also kind of teaching, we're also thinking about an ethical engineering framework as well. When
Uh-huh.
a lot of times when engineers say no, right? Business guys say yes because they need to make maximum profits, right? So I think
Right.
that all of these things are something that we're actually, going to companies and organizations, like I said, Boeing. If you need somebody to come in and clean what you guys have up, I'm the guy. Just
Yeah, and it's good PR, Bowen. So holla at your boy. Let's work together. We can
let's
make this
work.
happen.
Agree.
There's a whole bunch of planes that need to go out in production. I know we behind, but
Yeah,
this might be the way to catch up.
agree. Agree. We got you.
So all right, listen. I know there's gonna be a whole bunch of entrepreneurs that's gonna listen to this.
Yeah.
Our platform spans not only from just here in the U.S. but all
Yeah.
over the globe, especially across to my where my roots are from Nigeria and all across the Pan African diaspora.
Thanks.
What's some advice you would give to aspiring entrepreneurs, especially those in our Black and Pan African communities?
Yeah. I think the best thing that I can say is just learn from the best. I think that, sometimes I think that if you look at our community, right, I think that I have to understand the difference between, let's say, like having a job and having a career, right? Meaning, I think
Mm,
having a job is okay, you're just, maybe doing something to make ends meet. But I think having a career could be directly related to a professionalism that you carry about yourself for a specific industry, right? So I think
mm,
that's kind of the first thing, is to kind of realize, kind of figure out, like, do you want a job or do you want a career? Or really figure out, if you can have a career, what that may look like for you, right? Number two that I would say that's important is learn from the best people that's doing it. Don't reinvent the wheel. I think a lot of times, like people like, people, Black people mainly, right? When we
mm-hmm.
go into a concept or an idea, I think it's amazing that, we want to do it all on our own. But I think that the best thing you can do before you even start, building anything, before you even start really a company formation, is find who are the major players in that space and research case studies, right? So like for me in my space, a lot of competitors are like Fiverr, Upwork, and then design thinking is OpenIDEO from a guy named David Kelly at Stanford, right? And he
Mm-hmm.
made the shopping cart for Apple. Oh, excuse me, he made a shopping cart for a grocery store, and he made the mouse for Apple, right? So something that at least I try to do, and I always recommend that, is figure out who the major players are in the space, and then figure out who those people are who are building the products, necessary products, right? And then read the case studies and learn from them, because that's something that you can never, someone can never take that away from you, right? And
Yeah.
then I think once you kind of figure out, how you can learn from the best people, then I think that you should start implementing those practices into, what we're doing. I think that the whole entire goal, at least in my opinion, is the concept of like de-risking things, right?
Yeah.
Is like, we're going, like, the chances of entrepreneurship failing out of 10 is like 95%, right? But if
Mm-hmm.
you can figure out a way to de-risk that 95%, to decrease it a little bit more and more and more, like, again, every single day, then I think that's, in my opinion, where you're probably, that's probably some of the most advice that I can give people, is learning from the best, for sure.
Yeah, like I was just having this conversation
Yeah.
on a panel discussion I was on yesterday about sharpening the sword, and
Yeah.
we were talking about a lot of us, especially in the Black community, when we jump into entrepreneurship or business and so forth, we're sometimes going on hopes, wishes, and dreams, and we're not making those calculated
Mhm.
decisions. Like hey, you can make risk, but make calculated risk and informed decisions that help you move forward, and not just be
Yeah.
like, well, I'm praying everything that works out. I'm believing in the Lord's hands, right? Like that's not smart business, and that's not
Right.
how we should, move and operate. Yes, have faith,
Right.
but make calculated decisions in how
Right.
you move forward. So I'm
Right.
glad that you mentioned that.
No, for sure. So then, so like, and even to give you examples, like, give me an example of a product, just any product. Give me like two
Any
products.
two products.
Yeah.
So since
Related,
we,
like tech related, ideally.
I'm gonna give you Nintendo.
Okay.
And you said two tech related
Yeah, two
products.
tech related products.
Let's do Nintendo and Twitter.
Boom. Okay, ready? So Nintendo and Twitter. So let's say, there's a young entrepreneur out there, right, who's maybe in high school, who's inspired by the Nintendo Switch, right? The
Right.
first thing that I'm doing, because I feel like what I like to do is I like to get actionable steps and tangibles to kind of give people. The first
Uh-huh.
thing that I'm doing is I'm going to Nintendo's website and I'm looking at their people team. And I'm sending an email, or if they probably don't have emails, I'm going to the LinkedIn and I'm connecting with every single one of them and sending them a message. If there's 100 people, if there's 50 people, send them all a message, right? Then on top of that, right, something that, Elon, good, bad, or ugly, right? What he talked about
Yeah.
is called the step down approach, right? So you have, let's, for example, you have like your C-suite people, right? Then you
Mm,
have the vice presidents, and then you have the people above them. I'm going to go a
mm,
step below, right? So whoever your target is, go two steps down, and those are going to be the people that you want to talk to. So if you want to look at a senior engineer, then go to the associates engineer and ask them questions, and just go with an open mind about how you could just learn from them. See if you can get an
mm,
internship, right? See if they can give you a case study. See if they can talk to you about the products that they're working on, right? And then that way, now you're taking frame for thought. So now when you want to go to, somebody else, let's say like an investor, or you go to a event, then you can say, oh, this is what Nintendo's doing. This is the person that they're doing. That this is the person who's leading it, and this is what I've
mm,
learned. And now that not only do you help, is that helpful for yourself, but also
mm.
makes you sound more credible, right? So that's
Yeah.
kind of, hard stop there for Nintendo, right? Now for the second one, for the Twitter, or now X, right? For their concept, the first thing that I'm doing is I'm going to the founder of Twitter. His name is Jack Dorsey, right?
Mm,
So I'm saying, okay, well, why did he start Twitter, right? Who are the people that he started Twitter with? Where are the headquarters? They're in San Francisco. I happen to visit Twitter, right? And then I'm doing the same thing. I'm going on LinkedIn. I'm connecting with them. I'm sending them emails. I'm using the same step down approach where whoever you're trying to target, go 2 levels below that and just talk to as many people within the company. And if I want to
Mm-hmm.
start my new Twitter, then I'm going to figure out, well, why did they have to do a $44 billion sale, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the issues that they face when it comes to propaganda or election? It was election like rig or whatever it was with Russia and the Trump administration, the Biden administration, right? And I'm
Yeah.
learning about the industry as a whole, right? And because it's kind of like an iceberg, right? Meaning that
Mm.
you may see like the very top 15% of that product, but under that product is all these things, and I'm the person that's going to look under the iceberg 10 times out of 10. So I
Yeah.
think that that's something that I think that you should definitely do, is really just trying to learn from the best people, from the best players, see who's doing it. And in that way, when you, like I said before, when you go into an investor conversation, you say, oh, well, this is, I've identified 5 people in each one of our, largest competitors, and this is what they said, and this is the blueprint that they gave me, so how I can make it better. Boom.
Yo,
Right. And
I
that's,
love that.
yeah,
That advice is not only just good for entrepreneurship but anybody, especially if you're graduating or you're trying to get into a career, job, business. Because I used to teach that same framework, but I mean, you gave it more detailed and more umph to it. I used to tell folks like it's not necessarily what you know, it's who you know, right?
exactly.
Or and then I take it one step further. I like it's who knows you. And so basically by doing the strategy he just told y'all, listeners, people start to know you in the different industries that you're trying to work in or doing. And that's kind of what happened to me in my career. Like people started to know me because I was working with all these folks. And next thing you know, a lot of people knew me in different industries. And I never really, from the day forward of after my workforce development career, I never had to really officially apply because people already knew my name. And so when they knew I was available, like the messages stopped blowing up, or I'm always continuously getting offers and my name is getting mentioned in rooms my feet haven't even touched. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, like, just to give you another example on some of the value that we were creating. So that actually happened to me. So I ended up hosting a pitch competition, right? At USD. We had over 100 people show up to pitch their ideas and within our SpaceTime framework and how we can use your ideas to solve community-based problems, etc. So now when it comes to student engagement for entrepreneurship, especially from engineering, like, I'm the guy. So I've helped tens and 20s of students on our campus build their products, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've helped students not only build their products, but get full-time opportunities to work on, like drones and build construction companies, just because I'm in every single room and people kind of know me as like the tech engineering person and entrepreneurship and talent, because that's what we are. We just bridge talent, right? So I think you definitely are spot on, where it's like, if someone's mentioning your name in a room that, especially that you don't know, especially if you're not in the room, then I think that's kind of, and that's the career that I'm talking about, right? That's what I'm saying, about that professionalism that I think that all of us, I would say, hopes to strive for.
Yeah. And now I know you the guy in that industry, but now you crossed over into my industry because are you about to be the guy in engineering, podcasting? And I was like, he started a podcast now, man. All right, I got to bring him on now to talk about that. So all right, tell me what inspired the podcast. I know you're doing the podcast now, and then also let's dive into you're doing some fundraising too. So let's talk about the podcast first.
Yeah, so let's talk about what I've identified, right, was that, I'm young, I'm 23, and I'm a black man, right? So what that pretty much means is that the credibility standard, I would say, is pretty low when it comes to me trying to work with top, majority white corporations, right? So then what I decided to do was I said, you know what? Well, how could I just get people in a conversation? So I identified, people that work for top companies, so NASA, Microsoft, and then commercialization, and she used to work for NASA. So I essentially invited these 3 people on my podcast. And now that opened up doors for Microsoft. Oh, like I could now send these to other people at Microsoft and say, hey, I had so-and-so on your podcast, he's an employee, would love to have you on next, or let's talk about a future conversation, right? And then the other 2 guests that we had, DJ and Janaea, they're both pretty much my advisors for my startup now, and
Right.
they kind of help me with stuff, and they work for NASA. So when it comes to NASA connections, I also
Uh-huh.
participated in a NASA program that I didn't even know that Janaea was actually leading, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I ended up, why I ended up starting with, because I was thinking, I needed some kind of, you have to get creative, right? And
Mm-hmm.
content and podcasts is kind of what everybody likes to see, short form clips. And I was thinking, well, I want to make these corporate partnerships, and the classic B2B sales, as far as just picking up the phone, is not as useful at this exact day and age, as far as how old I am, especially. I
Mm-hmm.
said, well, let me invite them on the podcast, and let me invite them, to talk about themselves. And that's been how we saw, how we saw some of our early success.
Man, your advisory board about to be so lit and dope. And I see in the next future, you're
Yeah.
gonna have every CEO and VP on this on your advisory board through this, man.
Yeah.
I'm envisioning it already for you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Talk about the fundraiser.
Yeah. So we have launched a crowdfund campaign, right? And then if you go on spacetimesocial.com, we're actually looking to raise about $60,000. And the majority of that is going to help us with hiring, technology, and then marketing, right? And obviously, we all know that, if you have a good product, you need to figure out a way to have an engine to actually put that out in front of the right people and players. So we actually have 3 people that we have interest in hiring, right now for marketing, but we just need some kind of capital and a stipend to actually give them. So
Yeah.
that's the hopes of our fundraising campaign. So if you go to spacetimesocial.com, you will find the links there, and you will find the fundraising, and that will actually help us to get to our next milestone, hitting Q3.
Awesome. And man, y'all make sure y'all check that out. Support my boy. I'm gonna be on his podcast because we already talked about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're gonna make that happen. Honorable, thank you for sharing your insightful journey, your experiences, the advice. Everything was just point spot on. You have such an inspiring story. Where can our listeners follow you? Do you have like
Yeah.
social media out there anywhere they can follow you? I know we got the website. Give them the website once again, and they give
Yeah, so
me
we
any
have
socials.
spacetimesocial.com. It's all one
Uh-huh.
word. And you'll find a lot of our socials there. So that's our website. But if you want to
Yeah.
follow us on Instagram, you can follow us at spacetime.social. That's our Instagram. Twitter, it's also Spacetime Social. If you want to follow me personally on Instagram, which I also kind of use for, everything as well, it's going to be honorable.walker on Instagram.
Right. Awesome and fantastic. Make sure y'all go check them out there. If you're driving, don't worry. I'm going to put all the links into the show notes. And to our listeners, if you found value in today's episode, please subscribe and share Rise Urban Nation. Don't miss our next episode where we continue to share powerful stories that uplift and ignite. Until then, keep rising.
Thank you. Nice to meet you guys as well. And I hope you guys watch.
Peace.
Peace.